Called Sorghum and Millet. The title comes from Amanuel Asrat's poem, The Scourge of War. Sorghum and millet cut each other down. With no one to collect them, they feed on one another until a single seed remains. Dear Theresa May, I'm sorry to interrupt you at what must be a busy time. I want to tell you about Amanuel Asrat, Eritrean poet and journalist. In one sense, there isn't much to be said. No one knows for sure whether he's still alive. He was arrested along with many others in September 2001 during the government's elimination of Eritrea's free press. There have been reported sightings in a high-security prison near Asmara, but if these were genuine, something could easily have happened to him since then. He's in a state of quantum unknowability, reduced to a subatomic particle that, left unobserved, both exists and doesn't, the smallest possible unit of being. Honey wine and Asmara beer pool on the restaurant table. When no one wipes them up, they sip at each other, quenching their mutual thirst for oblivion, until just one droplet is left, swirling around in a vortex that swallows itself. Eritrea declared independence from Ethiopia in 1993, in line with 99.8% of votes in a UN-supervised referendum. A democratic constitution was written but not implemented. Then Ethiopia invaded. Elections were further postponed. The war lasted 2 years. Afterwards, President Isaias Afwerki kept Eritrea on a war footing. Elections have yet to be held. National service is compulsory and can last from age 18 until 50. There are those who started national service upon independence and still haven't been released. During service, freedoms are heavily restricted and pay is negligible. Desertion and avoidance incur grievous punishment. For most Eritreans, this national service involves hard manual labour for the state. An alternative name for this system would be slavery. When Eritrea's flag, the blue of the Red Sea and the land's green, slash away at each other, a crimson wound opens between them. Green hills tumble inwards and blue sea pours down this red chasm. Soon the whole flag is one colour. During the war with Ethiopia, Emanuel Asrat's poetry compared the two lands to feuding brothers who'd forgotten everything they had in common. And indeed, in the past there were nations like the ancient kingdom of Axum, encompassing parts of both modern countries. But you can be certain that Afwerki didn't like this anti-war message. The president's own masterstroke was to realise that war didn't have to involve fighting against a foreign power. He could declare war upon concepts like free speech, like truth, like peace itself. Stellae of Axum on either side of the frontier grind against each other. The tombs below these obelisks collapse under such pressure. One by one, the dead's voices are silenced until just one version of history survives. Theresa May, it might surprise you to learn about Afwerki. It's shocking that a leader could exploit an independence referendum to seize power without calling a general election, and could then deliver independence in a radically different form from what voters envisaged, restricting free trade and their freedom of movement. Indeed, the sheer brutality of the Eritrean situation should make any comparison with what's happening in the UK appear obscene, were it not for certain facts that should heat the floors of Whitehall's offices to the temperature of midday desert rocks. Footballers on the national team, while overseas for a match, give one another the red card. One by one they're sent off to claim for asylum. Soon the whole squad consists of just one empty boot tied up in its own laces. From Eritrea's dry fields billow dust clouds of own goals that pile high in the back of the net. You see, in 2014, the UK Home Office was under pressure from the Home Secretary to help restrict immigration. By reducing numbers of successful asylum claims, the success rate of Eritrean asylum seekers had been extremely high, at 73%, due to the threat of enslavement or detention upon return. So the Home Office started cooking the figures, as though they were prisoners locked up in a shipping container under the sun. For example, citing an incomplete report written for the Danish government while under similar pressure, and which the Danes have since disowned. Or taking the Eritrean government's verbal assurance that improvements would take place, but without making sure that these vows had been kept. New guidance came into force in March 2015, underestimating the Eritrean government's threat to its own people. The result after 6 months was to cut the success rate of Eritrean claimants down to 34%. but without this corresponding to any increase in human rights back home. Hands and feet tied together behind the back torment one another, while the stomach lies on the hot yard, and the spine's arch is reversed. If no one unbinds them, the victim's joints fray, until one thought is all that remains of this prisoner, the rest of consciousness rising skywards in a helicopter made from dislocated limbs. Hundreds of Eritreans who would otherwise have been granted UK sanctuary, who'd been fired upon multiple times and had struggled through deserts to escape their homeland, were faced with repatriation into slavery, and indeed some were sent back. However, 87% of appeals against these refusals did succeed, and the bad guidance itself was overturned in court that October, due to the flagrant breach not just of human rights but of factual evidence. But in the meantime, how many Eritreans fell victim to these lies? Well, the Home Secretary who instigated change has since been promoted to Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. So Prime Minister from a family that had included slave-owning sugar merchants got replaced by one who had tried to send Africans into slavery for free. Votes for the government and those opposed stop campaigning against one another. With no ballot box to receive them, they scatter. Some end up impaled on barbed wire, or snatched from the air by checkpoint soldiers, or sent by waves to the point of dissolution, until only Afewerki's vote remains. He waits for others to be posted back to him, so he can cast them into abjection too. In fact, slavery under national service will be a mild outcome for these failed asylum seekers. Many can expect prosecution for the suspected crime of saying, during the asylum process, that conditions in their home country are inhumane. They may face torture and imprisonment. Officially, Eritrea has no death penalty. In practice, the murder of prisoners by government forces does take place, so the very act of claiming asylum should suffice to justify the asylum claim. Articulating truth subjects Eritreans to the truth. They don't have to become great poets like Asrat. All that's required is a simple statement of facts, and events will emerge that will prove them right. Theresa May, by sending them back, you have made prophets of them. Hundreds of Emanuel Asrats to soothsay your role as a barb on the wire at the border, and to augur that Isaias Afewerki's own neurons are cells for solitary confinement of all Eritrea. The poet's words and those of the dictator silence one another. Poems alchemize the president's decrees to a torrent of bile from his mouth. The poet's speech is gagged with swaddling bands that have doubled as shrouds, until only one syllable escapes. It assignates with engines of the president's luxury jet, stolen by Air Force men to flee abroad. It alliterates with dozens of Kalashnikovs all jammed at once, and its meaning is the meaning of meaning itself. Amanuel Asrat is the name on the demob papers that at Eritrea's hills complete national service and rest from being mined. Amanuel Asrat is the name on the travel permit that says Eritrea's rivers can keep on flowing without drying up. Amanuel Asrat is the name on the medical exemption stating that the bush elephants of Gash Barka are unfit to carry machine guns. Amanuel Asrat is the name on the exit visa that lets the Dalak archipelago drift down the Red Sea and to freedom. Since 2001, Emanuel Asrat continues to publish articles whose text is white space between lies in the government newspaper. Since 2001, Eritreans can hear Emanuel Asrat's new poems read out in static between radio stations. Delete from this passage each name Emanuel Asrat and write in the name of an Eritrean you know. If you don't know any, which seems likely if you are indeed Theresa May, then try to meet one. This passage will stay true, and you'll be made more so. Sorghum and millet cut each other down. When no one gathers them, they consume each other until a single seed remains, one grain from which springs entire harvests.